Creídos hermanos y hermanas, cuantas veces nos pegamos preocupados como humana, cuantas nós passamos sem dormir, tentando resolver problemas que só Deus pode mudar, a preocupação é uma armadilha. Ela nos paralisa, nos desgasta e nos rouba a alegria de viver. Mas hoje eu quero te lembrar de uma verdade poderosa. Você pode ser livre de toda preocupação porque serve a Deus que faz milagres. Deus não te criou para viver em seu só. A palavra de Deus nos diz em Filipenses 4:6-7, não andeis ansiosos por coisa alguma, antes em tudo, sejam os vossos pedidos conhecidos de Deus pela oração e suplica com ecos de graças. Se Deus nos manda não nos preocuparmos, isso significa que Ele já preparou tudo o que precisamos. Ele cuida de cada detalhe da nossa vida, mesmo quando não conseguimos enxergar. 2. Confiança é uma escolha. Muitas vezes queremos confiar em Deus, mas nossas emoções nos fazem duvidar. O medo sussurra e sinal de certo, mas a fé responde que tem tudo sob controle. Escolha confiar em Deus mesmo quando a lógica diz o contrário. Acredite que Ele está agindo mesmo quando nada parece mudar. 3. O Deus dos milagres ainda opera hoje. O mesmo Deus que abriu o mar vermelho, que fez mana cair do céu e que curou os enfermos e o Deus que está cuidando da sua vida hoje. Ele não mudou. Se Ele fez milagres no passado, Ele pode fazer agora. Não limite Deus com sua preocupação. Em vez disso, cria que Ele pode transformar qualquer situação. Viva o presente e deixe o futuro nas mãos de Deus. Muitas vezes sofremos porque temos carga futuro nas nossas costas. Mas Jesus nos ensinou algo precioso em Mateus 6:34. Não vos inquieteis pelo dia de amanhã, porque o amanhã cuidará de si mesmo. Isso significa que vos pode descansar hoje. Deus já está no seu futuro, preparando caminhos e abrindo portais que vos não imagina. Concluso hoje, eu te convido a entregar toda a sua preocupação nas mãos de Deus. Troca o medo pela fé. Escolha confiar em Deus que é maior do que qualquer problema. E lembre-se, Ele ainda faz milagres. Que Deus sabe que worry is a thief. It sneaks into our hearts and minds, robbing us of peace, joy, and energy. It keeps us up at night replaying worst-case scenarios, making us feel like we have to solve everything on our own. But here's the truth. God never intended for us to live like this. How many times have you found yourself overthinking a situation, trying to figure out every possible outcome, only to realize that your worry didn't change a single thing? In fact, the only thing it did was drain you emotionally and spiritually. That's exactly what worry does. It exhausts us. It wears us down. It distracts us from what really matters. And worst of all, it pulls us away from trusting God. The Bible is clear about this. In Matthew 6:27, Jesus asks, "Qual de vossos por mais que pode acrescentar uma hora que seja sua vida?" In other words, worry doesn't add anything to our lives, it only takes away. And yet, so many of us continue to carry burdens that God never asked us to carry. We stress over things that haven't even happened yet, and we allow fear to control our decisions. But let me tell you something powerful. Worry and faith cannot exist in the same space. When we are full of worry, we are not full of faith. And when we are full of faith, worry loses its power over us. That's why the enemy loves to use worry against us. If he can keep us trapped in fear, doubting God's goodness, then he can keep us from experiencing the joy and freedom that come from truly trusting God. Now, I'm not saying that life is always easy. We all face situations that make us feel anxious. Bills pile up. Relationships become strained. Unexpected problems arise. And in those moments, it's easy to fall into the habit of worrying. But here's what we need to remember. God is bigger than any problem we will ever face. Think about the Israelites when they were trapped between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army. From a human perspective, it looked like an impossible situation. There was no way out. They were surrounded, and their fear began to take over. But what did Moses say to them? Now tenem medo. Fiquam firms e vejamo livramento o Senhor lhes trará hoje. Exodus 14:13. And we all know what happened next. God made a way where there was no way. That same God who parted the Red Sea is the God who is fighting for you today. He hasn't changed. He hasn't lost his power. He still performs miracles. And just like he made a way for the Israelites, he will make a way for you. But you have to trust him. You have to let go of the worry and believe that he is working on your behalf. One of the best ways to overcome worry is through prayer. Philippians 4:6-7 tells us, Now andes ansiosos por cosa alguna antes en tudo, seguen los vossos pedidos conocidos diante Dios pelo recao y suplica, camacos de breques. Did you catch that? It doesn't say to only pray about the big things. It says to bring everything to God in prayer. That means when you start to feel anxious, you don't have to carry it alone. You can go to God and say, Senhor, you now sei como resolver isso nos escolhe confiar em ti. Eu entrego esse problema nas tuas mãos. And when you do that, something incredible happens. The Bible says that the peace of God, which exceeds all understanding, will guard your heart and mind. Worry is a habit, so is faith. The more we choose to trust God, the easier it becomes. Every time we let go of a worry and place it in God's hands, we are building our faith. We are strengthening our trust in him. And over time, we begin to live in the freedom and peace that he has promised us. So today, I challenge you, release your worries to God. Whatever has been weighing you down, whatever has been keeping you up at night, surrender it to him. Make a decision that you will no longer let fear control your life. Instead, choose to trust in the God who loves you, who cares for you, and who is always working behind the scenes on your behalf. And the next time worry tries to creep in, remind yourself that this Deus has no control. You now preciso ter todas as respostas. Eu posso descansar sobre ele já control and let go of the worry, choose faith, and watch as God moves in ways you never imagined. Our feelings are powerful, aren't they? They can lift us up or pull us down. They can make us feel confident one moment and completely uncertain the next. And here's something important to understand. Feelings are not always the truth. Just because you feel something doesn't mean it's real. Just because you feel afraid doesn't mean you're in danger. Just because you feel hopeless doesn't mean there's no way out. That's why we can't let our feelings dictate our faith. Instead, we have to let our faith dictate our feelings. Think about how many times emotions have led you in the wrong direction. Maybe you woke up one morning feeling discouraged for no particular reason. Maybe anxiety crept in, whispering lies that made you doubt yourself, doubt your future, and even doubt God. The enemy loves to use our emotions against us because he knows that if he can get us to feel defeated, we'll start to act defeated. And if we act defeated, we'll stop believing in the power of God working in our lives. That's why faith is so important. Faith isn't about what we see, and it certainly isn't about what we feel. Faith is about trusting in God's promises, no matter what our emotions tell us. The Bible says in 2 Corinthians 5:7, porque vivimos por fe y no pelo que vimos. That means we don't rely on our circumstances, our emotions, or even our own understanding. We rely on God. Let's be honest, sometimes faith doesn't feel good at first. It's not always easy to trust when everything around you looks like it's falling apart. Your emotions scream, this is impossible. Nothing is changing. You're all alone. But faith speaks a different language. Faith says, Deus está comigo. Ele está trabalhando, mesmo que eu não veja. Eu escolho confiar en ele. And the more you feed your faith, the quieter those emotions become. Look at Peter walking on water in Matthew 14. He started out in faith. He saw Jesus and believed that if Jesus called him, he could do the impossible. So he stepped out of the boat. And guess what? It worked. He actually walked on water. But then something happened, his feelings got in the way. He noticed the wind. He felt afraid. He let his emotions take over, and as soon as he did, he started to sink. What does that tell us? It tells us that the moment we take our focus off Jesus and start listening to our emotions, we lose our ability to walk in faith. Peter didn't start sinking because Jesus failed him. He sank because he let his fear override his faith. But here's the good news. Even when Peter failed, Jesus didn't let him drown. Jesus reached out, grabbed him, and lifted him back up. That's what God does for us. He knows we struggle with doubt and fear. He knows our emotions try to pull us away from trusting him. But every time we start to sink, he is right there, ready to lift us up. We just have to reach for him. Faith is a choice. It's not something that just happens to us. It's something we have to actively build every single day. Romans 10:17 says, "Afi viam pilo ovir, io uvir pela palabra de Deus." That means we strengthen our faith by filling our hearts and minds with God's truth. The more we focus on his promises, the less power our feelings will have over us. Maybe today you're facing a situation that feels overwhelming. Maybe your emotions are telling you that things will never get better. But let me remind you of something. Your feelings do not get the final say. God does. He is still in control. He is still working on your behalf. And no matter how things feel right now, his promises are still true. So choose faith over feelings. Speak God's truth over your situation, even when you don't feel like it. Stand on his promises, even when everything inside you wants to give up. Because at the end of the day, your feelings may change, but God never does. And when you trust in him, you will never sink. God is still in the miracle business. He hasn't changed. He hasn't lost his power. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who made water flow from a rock, who raised the dead and healed the sick is the same God who is working in your life today. But here's the problem. Sometimes we believe in miracles in theory, but we struggle to believe that God will do them for us. We think, sure, God did great things in the Bible, but will he really come through for me? Doubt is one of the biggest obstacles to experiencing the power of God. We live in a world that teaches us to rely on logic, facts, and human understanding. And while those things have their place, faith requires us to believe beyond what we can see. Faith is believing that God is working, even when nothing seems to be changing. Faith is trusting that he is making a way, even when every door appears closed. Think about the story of Lazarus in John 11. Mary and Martha sent word to Jesus that their brother was sick. They knew Jesus had the power to heal him. But instead of coming immediately, Jesus delayed. And because of that delay, Lazarus died. Can you imagine the pain and confusion Mary and Martha must have felt? They must have thought, Jesus, why didn't you come sooner? If you had been here, this wouldn't have happened. And maybe you felt that way before. Maybe you've been praying for a breakthrough, and it seems like God isn't answering. Maybe you've been asking for a miracle, and it feels like he's late. But here's the truth, God is never late. He is always on time. When Jesus finally arrived, Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days. By human standards, it was over. There was no hope left, but Jesus wasn't finished. He told them to roll away the stone, and despite their doubts, he called Lazarus out of the grave. And just like that, a dead man walked out alive again. That's the power of God. He specializes in impossible situations. He steps in when all hope is lost and does what only he can do. The problem is we often give up too soon. We stop believing before the miracle happens. We allow doubt, fear, and disappointment to take over. But what if Mary and Martha had refused to roll away the stone? What if they had let their doubt stop them from witnessing a resurrection? Sometimes God asks us to take a step of faith before we see the miracle. He asked Peter to step out of the boat before he walked on water. He told the priests in Joshua's time to step into the Jordan River before the waters parted. He told Naaman to dip himself in the Jordan 7 times before his leprosy was healed. Over and over again, we see that miracles require faith. They require trust. They require us to believe before we see. Maybe you're in a situation right now where you need a miracle. Maybe it's in your health, your finances, your family, or your career. And maybe you've been waiting so long that you're starting to lose hope. But let me remind you, God is not done with your story. Just because you don't see the answer yet doesn't mean he isn't working behind the scenes. Just because it looks impossible to you doesn't mean it's impossible for him. Ephesians 3 tells us that God is able to do infinitely more than all we ask or imagine. That means whatever miracle you're believing for, God can do even greater than that. But you have to stand firm in faith. You have to hold on even when things don't make sense. One of the best ways to build your faith is to remember what God has already done. Think back to the times he has answered your prayers, the times he has provided for you, the times he has made a way when there was no way. If he did it before, he can do it again. And if you're struggling to believe for yourself, read the Word. Fill your mind with stories of God's power. Let the testimony of others encourage you to keep trusting. God is still in the miracle business. He still heals. He still restores. He still provides. And he is still working in your life. So don't stop believing. Don't stop praying. Don't stop expecting. Your miracle could be just around the corner. So many of us lie trapped in worry about the future. We spend our days anxious about what might happen, and in the process, we miss out on the life God has given us right now. We say things like, what if I don't get that job? What if my finances don't improve? What if things never change? And before we know it, we are consumed by fear about something that hasn't even happened yet. But here's the truth. God did not create us to live in constant anxiety about the future. He created us to trust him. Jesus himself spoke about this in Matthew 6:34. Now vos inquieres pilo dia diamania, porque o amanhã cuidará de si mesmo. That means God doesn't want us to be so focused on what could happen tomorrow that we forget to live today. Worrying about the future doesn't change it. It doesn't prevent problems from happening. All it does is rob us of the joy, peace, and purpose that we are meant to experience right now. But here's the thing, letting go of worry is easier said than done. Life gives us plenty of reasons to feel anxious. Unexpected bills show up. Health scares happen. Relationships go through struggles. And when things feel uncertain, our natural instinct is to try to figure everything out. We want to be in control. We want to know how everything is going to work out before we trust God. But faith doesn't work that way. Faith means trusting even when we don't have all the answers. It means believing that God is already in our future making a way for us. Think about the Israelites when they were in the wilderness. God provided them with manna food from heaven, but he only gave them enough for each day. If they tried to gather more and save it for the next day, it would spoil. Why? Because God wanted them to learn to trust him daily. He wanted them to rely on him one day at a time, not hoard extra just in case he didn't come through tomorrow. That same principle applies to us today. God gives us the grace we need for this day. He doesn't ask us to figure out the rest of our lives all at once. He asks us to trust him one step at a time. The enemy, on the other hand, wants to keep us so overwhelmed by the future that we don't even recognize God's blessings in the present. He wants us to be so focused on what's missing that we don't see what God has already provided. But what if instead of worrying about tomorrow, we started trusting God today? What if instead of trying to predict every possible outcome, we chose to believe that God is already working things out for our good? Romans 8:28 reminds us, "Sabemos que dias em todas as coisas para o bem daqueles que o amam." That means nothing we go through is wasted. God is using everything that we delay, every challenge, every unexpected turn for a greater good. Maybe right now, you don't understand why certain things are happening. Maybe you feel stuck waiting for answers that haven't come yet. But let me encourage you. Just because you don't see the whole picture doesn't mean God isn't working. Sometimes God allows delays because he is preparing something better than what we originally asked for. Sometimes he closes one door because he has another one that will lead to something greater. But we will never experience that if we keep holding on to worry instead of holding on to faith. When we choose to trust God with our future, something amazing happens. Peace replaces anxiety. Joy replaces fear. We begin to live in the freedom that comes from knowing we don't have to figure everything out because God already has. Psalm 37:5 says, "Entrega o teu caminho ao Senhor, confia nele e ele tudo fará." That means our job is simple, surrender and trust. It's not our responsibility to make everything happen. It's our responsibility to trust the one who holds our future in his hands. So today I challenge you to make a decision. Stop worrying and start trusting. Give your future to God and focus on living the life he has given you today. Instead of stressing about things you can't control, focus on what you can control, spending time with him, living with gratitude, and walking in faith. Because when you trust God with your future, you can finally experience the peace he has promised you. And that is the kind of life he wants for you.